Welcome to the Tutule Show, where we invite you to take a seat and stay a while as we discuss the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, in the middle of a pandemic, 2020 has seen protests all over the world against the systemic oppression of Black people. What started as a hashtag in 2013 has grown into a global movement. The anger of seeing Blacks being treated as second-class citizens is something that is deeply rooted in the fabric of existence and our history as Africans. And today, we are here to discuss how this global movement relates to us here in Uganda and Africa. Today, I'm joined by some very interesting guests, and I will allow them to introduce themselves, beginning with the gentleman on my left.
Thank you very much, Sima. My name is Samson Kasumba, and I'm a news anchor. I'm a biblical theologian, very passionate about that, and I'm very, very opinionated.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. My name is Rosebell Kagumire. I'm a feminist. I am an editor of a Pan-African platform called African Feminism, and I'm glad to join this conversation.
Thank you very much. And last but not least.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I happen to be the most interesting man in the world. I am Teddy Ruge. I am an entrepreneur, writer, photographer, but mostly very educated, angry African.
Okay.
Online.
Teddy, Rosebell, and Samson, thank you for joining us here today. So let's get into it. Samson, where do you think Ugandans fit into this conversation, and why do some say that it doesn't apply to them or is only for elite Ugandans?
I think generally speaking, and honestly speaking, many Ugandans feel that this is an American thing. But I think that the heart of somebody who kills a Black person because they are Black is probably similar, if not the same, as the heart of a Black person who kills another Black person for another reason. We're actually talking about ending lives, and Ugandans have got to be concerned about ending lives. I think that a Ugandan police officer should understand that Black Lives Matter as much as a white police officer in the United States.
Okay. I mean, Teddy, let me ask you, because there are a lot of Ugandans who have relatives in the States or who studied there. Even if they came back to Uganda, they still have that attachment. Why do you think that some Ugandans think that supporting the Black Lives Matter movement is only for people who have been abroad?
I don't know exactly how to relate that to the Ugandan experience, as it were, because it's a different dynamic. The only way we would have done that if we were in the middle of colonialism right now, where we were second-class citizens to our colonial masters. It's very much the same dynamic in the United States. Essentially, they took colonialism, and if you remove the specter of slavery, 400 years of oppression, etc., but they left the structures exactly the same way, where you don't feel like you actually belong. When I arrived in the United States at the age of 11, it was the first time I actually heard somebody call me Black.
Yeah.
Right? It's the first time I actually thought about my color, about my place in the world, is because you as an African traveling anywhere in the world are going to be treated as a second-class citizen, period. Okay. Right? Whether you're going to Dubai, which we love to do and go over there, we have young, hordes of young women who are in United Arab Emirates and working as second-class citizens. Their passports get taken away.
That's true.
They're essentially modern slavery to that. So for a lot of people that actually say, "Oh, it's just for the United States," no, it isn't.
It matters to us here.
It matters to us.
In the last few weeks, I've been working with a movement in Lebanon called Anti-Racist Movement, which has been fundraising for hundreds and hundreds of African young women. They are all stuck there. They went to be domestic workers, and everybody wants to come back home, and they have no way to come back home because your passport is confiscated, and you live in a house. You're not allowed to go anywhere. This is very much at the heart of anti black racism that you find in the Middle East. It's very present. It's not just about United States. The system of racism is rooted in colonialism. It's rooted in all systems that have subjugated Africa, and that can be found in most societies on the planet.
Very true. Samson, you mentioned something about police brutality in Uganda and that Ugandans should be taken to the streets to protest it. Is it fair to compare Ugandans taking to the streets to protest and, let's say, Americans taking to the streets to protest? I mean, we've seen there was actually a group of Ugandans who were protesting in Kampala and they were arrested. Do you think it's really fair to compare the two?
I think that classism is an ism as much as racism is. There's a group here that thinks exactly the same as white supremacists and behave the same way. That's why lives are taken here, like they are taken in the United States, and no police officer is tried. Because supremacy has arrived here.
But
and we are becoming subconscious of it because we are so concerned about supremacy with color, not life.
That's a structure. That is a structure. We cannot have this conversation about how Black Lives Matter without actually defining how we are as a society. Yeah. We are still colonized, right? Yeah. The chains of slavery may have left. The colonizers may have left, but what they left behind is the most powerful weapon that they ever unleashed. And that is the colonization of the mind. Did we have a police force before we were colonized? No.
Why would you need to be policed?
Yeah, why would you need to be policed? That structure was specifically, right, adopted from a colonial mindset. We still wear stupid wigs in our courts of law.
Mimicking someone.
Mimicking that kind of structural power we thought, now we get to inherit. Post-colonialism, and even our leaders, our aging leaders right now, replicate that very same structure. Instead of rolling back and actually realizing what our identity is, that we also matter. And I think at the root of Black Lives Matter is the fact that we begin to realize that we are co-equal humans on this planet, right? And we must get back to fighting and actually saying we contribute just as equally to the human archive than colonizers or any other race on this planet. But so long as we continue to ape the structures of white supremacy, we will always be fighting an uphill battle in terms of identity, belonging, and equality.
I think it's very important to get out of the trap of thinking exceptional. You're not an exceptional. You are part of the greater globalized systems of capitalism and racism. And if you're a woman, you get patriarchy fully blown from your own family telling you can't own land, you can't do all these things. So I don't think that the trap shouldn't be like police brutality is just one side. There's just so many signs of the system around us because this system was left here and we are still using that system. And the idea that the police is above the law has always been there. The police can go after you and do anything to you. You will never hear of anything that has come out of that. That was what the colonialists did. And we are still doing it because we have not changed the system.
My concern is that every time you mention Black Lives Matter and the hashtag, in many people's minds here, you're joining to fight somebody's cause, which is a good cause and a good thing to do, not doing something that is also real here. And for me, that's where I was pushing all lives matter. I don't see color and can't see color because that's the position of biblical theology. Especially if you're going to go with the Apostle Paul, when he talks about there being no Jew or Gentile, slave or free. We're talking about the biblical position.
Don't see color. He said recognize that there are inequalities and address them. You are trying to subjugate. You are subverting the gospel.
That's exactly what a racist is going to say. It's like, I don't see color.
I'm not finished. I'm saying the biblical position, at least if we are
your interpretation.
No, it's not mine.
It is yours.
Of course it is yours.
Because we
what
are
it is.
different.
It's yours.
And we
What it
read the
is.
same
No,
Bible.
but-
I want to see where this is going.
Yeah. So the thing is that there should not be color distinctions, and there is no biblical theologian who can start to see things in terms of color. And that's where I come from in saying that all life is life,
But Samson,
and it should matter. And that's why, in my opinion, I think that we should be on the streets when black people kill black people as well. Because when a black, just a second, when a black person kills a black person, black lives should matter there.
I think that's reductionism.
think-
You're
Thank you.
bringing, yes, it's reductionism. You're trying to say that this thing cannot exist without talking about this. It's like saying, okay, I'm talking about specific issues that women have in this country. You're like, no, but we need to first talk about men. Let's address everybody in
genders
this
matter.
nation. I think the conversation here is that some people are disproportionately affected by something, and therefore you must address it in a certain way. I think that it's like
Rosebell,
coming home. It's
you missed
like
the point.
it's like coming home. Like we know very well, like people are discriminated on their ethnicity in this country, and therefore it has led to their underdevelopment compared to where we are.
and not because the lives, when it comes to the so-called black on black crime, which is often touted in this kind of discussion, but when it comes to police brutality and the black people who have died at the hands of the police, it is because they're black. That's why they were stopped. That's why they were shot. How many times have we heard of, I mean, even recently there was a guy who drove across the state to shoot people. He was a white guy. They didn't take him out, that kind of thing.
And he literally had a gun strapped to him with his hands up, and they didn't shoot him.
Yeah.
How many black people have you seen with their hands up, naked, no guns, and they were shot down?
Yeah.
But another,
That is the kind of structural
another illustration
racism
is
we're
that,
actually
okay,
talking about.
here, police kills people. It's one thing for that to be the mismanagement and everything that's rooted in colonialism, but it's another if a police officer found me at a stop and said, oh, you're a Mnyankore, boom, and shoot you. That is a hate crime. That's why we distinct that from anything else. You're not going to say it's just the police saying that. That's why these kinds of laws exist to define specific things, hatreds,
specific
ideologies,
crime.
so that we can separate it from the general messiness of society.
I think, I actually know that human life is sacred and is important and should never be taken in such a dismissive way, because you see police officers here, senior police officers, explaining away the shooting of Kauma, explaining away, the killing of a life as if it's not a human life. So we've got to localize that. To keep it at Black Lives Matter gets deaths that happen here lost in translation. And I think for me as a parent, when I lose a child, I'm not so sure I'll be hurt more because the shooter was white or black. I've just lost a child.
Teddy, I wanted your reaction on something that Samson had said earlier when he said that he doesn't see color. There's something that sort of flips it across your face. I was like, we need to get into this.
I literally, how? Like how? I can understand.
So can you
if
see
you're
my head
colorblind.
wrap?
I literally understand, like if you're colorblind. It's the worst excuse for white supremacists. I don't see color. It's just as bad. I'm not racist because my best friend is black.
Yes.
That's
Or I've got black friends.
Yeah, or I have
Teddy,
black friends.
remember the person who said that?
I have black children.
It's a black man who said so.
Said what?
It's me who is saying I don't
It
see
doesn't
color,
matter.
not a white man.
No. Even me as a
And
black
please don't say I'm brainwashed.
even me as a black person,
Yeah.
to go to the United States, of course I see color. I see my difference in a society that's predominantly white. So for a white person to tell me I don't see color is to tell me I don't see you.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't see the structure that you're talking about because I'm here at the top. I don't feel what you feel. You have to
But
be
it's also
empathetic.
denial of
Yeah.
the fact that you are at the top because your people subjugated my people and you continue to subjugate me.
Yeah, because you don't see it. You don't see it. You feel. When you're in that bubble of privilege, you don't see it.
Should we
And you
care
don't
when
feel
white people are killed?
Of course, we should care. Of
Should
course,
we
we
go
should
on
care.
the streets as well?
But
Come
again,
on,
Samson,
Samson.
don't
That completely gets away from the conversation.
don't you think that's
It
like
really-
a false comparison?
Yeah, it
because
is a
how
false
often
comparison.
do you hear?
But it's not like black people don't care about any other death but themselves. I
Maybe
think
if we
you're trying.
did that,
I
they'll
think
get us.
No.
if you
No.
cajole, like, you were nicest to the colonizer or to the oppressor, they will treat you better. Your mistreatment is necessarily about you not being nice to the person who is mistreating you.
But you
That
gotta
is
understand-
gaslighting.
You
to
gotta
be
understand
honest.
where I come from the place of love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
Wow.
Mm.
I guess white Jesus would understand that, not me.
Samson, if I can ask you a question, do you not think that it's fair to make the comparisons between saying all lives matter or Black Lives Matter, considering the fact that Black people are disproportionately killed, murdered on the streets purely because of their race?
It's very unfortunate that that is happening. But the unfortunate thing is, when you're passionately a biblical theologian like I am, then love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you is not something you can run away from. If you don't believe the things I believe, then it's fair for you to call it brainwashing. And I supported NBS at the time when the T-shirts went out and they were saying, all lives matter, because
That caused quite a stir on social media.
absolutely,
Yes.
and I stood with NBS. These young people went out there and didn't plan anything malicious, but I understand that this all lives matter thing came from the wrong group, and every time you talk about all lives matter, you cannot be delinked from the wrong group.
Neither should you.
And neither should you.
Neither
And-
should you, because I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier. We cannot have this conversation about how Black Lives Matter relates to Uganda without attaching it to the colonized mindsets that we walk around with. All Lives Matter UNBS stunt is essentially exactly what I'm talking about, where whatever white people do is what we ape as a society.
Without.
Right? It's what we ape as a society, because they saw, all lives matter is what the white people are arguing, then we should jump on that, on board with that. The colonized mindset in this country very much apes everything and supports the structural racism that we have had for hundreds of years since we were colonized. Whatever the white person says must be it. I've been in many situations where I have a white colleague who I outranked intellectually, even academically. However, the very same people that were there in the room deferred to this white person as opposed to me. We cannot divorce that kind of mentality, that kind of colonized mentality by a group of people on a television show to actually just out themselves as idiots, complete idiots, not understanding the man.
Just a second. Hold a second. Does anybody care to stop and think that the producer and people doing this could have done this completely oblivious?
Yeah, but
I don't think anyone...
Just a second. To the fact that somebody else had the same movement.
No,
And now, just a second.
I do
And
not
let me
believe,
just finish.
and it's not about intention. Also,
Just a second.
it's about
Rosebell.
what harm you cause.
Just a second. They are crucified. As if, no, you're in the media, you should have known.
Yes.
Well,
But if they
rightfully
didn't
so.
know, they didn't know.
So what kind of person do you jump onto All Lives Matter as a producer?
but
It's
you
not
don't
even.
know-
I'm not talking about the guys.
Just a second.
I'm not talking
You're
about the
saying-
guys.
Just a second.
I'm not talking
You're
about
saying
the
they are
guys.
jumping on
Listen.
because they knew.
Listen.
They may not have known.
Listen, when the whole world
Was it deliberate in your opinion?
was actually
Was it deliberate in your
No,
opinion?
but
Samson, I
listen,
don't
it's
think
not
anyone's
about
saying-
it's not about my judgment, because I don't know. I prefer the fact, but I'm saying that there are so many scenarios that could have happened. I am not talking about the guys who wore them actually, because I think we have systems that should be able to know and checks and balances. Those are the people that I hold accountable.
If they were convinced and had conviction about All Lives Matter, then why did they apologize?
Yeah, there was an apology.
There was an apology
Yeah.
at the very end. They knew what they were doing. How do you do something like that? You have smart, intelligent, I would assume, educated, journalists connected to the internet who actually understand the tenets of the argument, the tenets of the struggle, and why the entire world is actually donning shirts that say Black Lives Matter. Why? when oppression is there and it's very evident, and then you side on yourselves on the side of the oppressor, it's very troubling.
It's not on the side of the
It is
oppressor.
absolutely on the side of the oppressor,
It's
because
the
where did
thinking
all
it
lives
is.
matter come
It
from?
is.
Where did all lives matter come from?
For me, I don't
Right.
think that anybody here disagrees with the fact that all lives matter. But what I hear
That's
we
not
don't.
our
But that's not the
preoccupation,
conversation.
though.
That's not the
Let me finish
conversation.
the point.
It's
It's not the
topic.
preoccupation.
You
It's not
got
the
the
topic.
point in the middle. What I hear everybody saying is that when we're talking about all lives matter, don't tell us. When we're talking about Black Lives Matter, don't tell us that all lives matter.
Yeah, what does
Because
it
it
mean?
diminishes
What does
the
also
argument.
all lives matter mean? To what are you driving to?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a basis. It's like saying, Uganda is green or Kampala is. So what? That is a known
I think the
fact.
analogy
It's like
here
a
is
known
wrong.
fact, but it does not build anything. So for me, at the end of the day, we have to look at how racial justice applies to a place like Africa, majority of Africa, where necessarily white bodies are not present to be whipping you,
Yes.
to be killing you, but actually we are in white systems, the old ones, but also new ones. When colonialism left, we have all this NGO sector saying we are here to develop you. But how have we developed? Because this is a system based on white supremacy.
Yes.
White people coming to tell you in your village, dig a well here, you
Wash
need
your
a latrine
toppers.
here,
Yeah.
wash your hands. How come all this COVID, when white people are not around, we have been washing our hands?
Yes.
They would have huge organizations moving around, wash your hands, and they would fly in all white people from everywhere to come and tell us to wash our hands and be clean. But this COVID has
Because you're
exposed...
dying of cholera.
Because COVID has exposed that people can adjust their behavior and the local people can work for themselves. So when we are talking about racial justice in the situation of Uganda, we need to interrogate these systems that we think a white person is
That
going to
we
come to our
subconsciously
village.
support.
We support them to come to our village to dig a latrine, build a school. The system that continues without giving much, without giving us room as a people to actually develop.
The UN resident coordinator told a painful story of how she landed here, presented her credentials to the president. I mean, doing her job.
Who is a black woman, by the way.
She shows up at a function and they're asking her boss. These are Ugandans asking another African where her boss is because she doesn't belong in that job. Then you get married and then you show up at a function and then people are saying Abakoko or Mwiru, those people. I think that's what we must deal with. Whether it is, because it's the same thing. You're not supposed to marry our daughter. What are you doing here? When you are Mwiru, or when you're Mkoko, or you are Mnyarwanda, we must deal with these things. Because for me, that's the mindset in which these people who believe they are special end up in power and they start treating everybody else as second-class citizens who they just do a favor when they want, and then you start to hear language of, we are helping you.
Samson, Teddy, and Rosebell, thank you so much for being with us on the Tutule show today. The conversation continues, particularly in the light of the recent verdict in the Breonna Taylor case. So do join the conversation. We want to hear from you, whether you're watching us from here in Uganda or wherever you are in the world. Just follow us on all our social media platforms and join the conversation right here. And we will see you next time on the Tutule show.